What is up, everybody? How you doing? Welcome to Randomly Selected. I'm your host, Mario Smith. Randomly Selected is powered by The Silver Room. Thank you for coming back. Truly appreciate it. Tell your people, listen, and subscribe. Last episode was hot. This one, ooh boy, it's going to be really good. Rashayla Marie Brown is with us today. She is a creative that wears a million hats. She is a leader in the arts field for sure. And it's, as a woman, a lot of obstacles for women, unnecessary obstacles at that. But she conquers all of those. We talked to her about her nomadic lifestyle because the woman, I swear to God, has lived everywhere on earth. And we talk about where that comes from. Ladies and gentlemen, without any further ado, although I just gave you a bunch of ado, here's Rashayla Marie Brown. She has been randomly selected. Rashayla, well. Here we are.
Yes, indeed.
How are you?
I'm good.
It's good to see you.
Yes, it's good to see you too.
Absolutely. I'm going to act like I don't know you for like 10 minutes. Then I'm just going to go jump in.
Good, because a lot of people don't know me, so they might need a real introduction.
Interesting you said that. Let's start on that path. Your bio has you listed as, oh God, it's like 10 different things. I know you as, I didn't know you were a poet.
Yes.
Poet, essayist, curator. Mm-hmm. Do you like the word curator?
I would say I don't identify with it as much as I used to, but I will curate something. I mean, I was curating
creator.
very seriously for a while. Yeah.
That was your thing. You were more of the person that put the stuff together as opposed to being the person that If that's not even fair, though, because most of what you curated was stuff you were doing.
Yeah, no, I was in it and organizing
Yeah.
it. So most of the work that I did in curating and event programming and organizing was to create opportunities for artists and myself. And so I became really clear that the art world and design worlds and all these different places, entrepreneurship, like you're not going to get opportunities unless you put yourself out there and you take charge. Yeah. So it felt like something I had to do because nobody else was doing it. I was hearing a lot of artists complain about how they were being curated or treated in shows, how the institutions were dealing with them.
I think we may have talked to each other about how people are getting curated or treated in shows and whatnot. It's a male-dominated everything. Was that part of the impetus for you to say, okay, fuck it, let me make this path for myself?
So the real thing, it wasn't, I think gender is always a piece of that because I do think a lot about being a woman and what it means to like be a leader as a woman. And also dealing with the fact that a lot of people don't know what it means to take instruction from a woman. Even if you're the smartest person in the room. I mean, I've been in that situation a lot where I knew that I was the smartest or one of the smartest people in the room and I was being treated or, talked down to in a way that was just not at the level of my intellect. Yeah. And so there was always that piece of it, but I think organizing, it wasn't exclusively about gender. It was also about just anybody who's been denied access or opportunities. So that could be a racial thing, that could be a nationality thing, a linguistic thing, a sexuality and gender thing. So for me, it's like I've always had a place in my heart for people who don't have access to things because I didn't have access to things. And even when I was incredibly privileged from an educational standpoint, I recognized that there was a lot that I wasn't told. Like I didn't know any successful artists. I didn't know people who made a living doing what they care about. I knew a lot of frustrated artists and people who gave up on their dreams and family members who sadly, just weren't able to make things happen for themselves. And it was more about that.
Yeah.
So that I wasn't in a position where I always had my hand out, but I was the person creating those opportunities for myself and also for other people who don't have the same kind of organizational and administrative experience that I have. So that was why I started doing it too, because I had come from, so when I started doing curating and started participating in the art world in a more direct way, it was after I had worked in corporate America and as an entrepreneur for years. So I already had a lot of the experience about doing budgets and organizing and publicity that a lot of artists, unfortunately, either they're not interested in doing it because it's a lot of that like logistical labor, or it's just they're not very good at it. So when I got to a space where I was noticing I was kind of I was older than all the people I was going to art school with. I was more of a mentor figure to a lot of them, that I felt it was part of my calling to do that, to look for ways to use my skills to assist in this new life that I was going into as an artist.
Where are you Chicago born?
No, I was born in Toledo, Ohio.
Word?
Yeah.
Shout out Ohio. Shout
Toledo,
out to the people
Ohio.
in Toledo.
Where dreams go to die. Yeah. Honestly, there's a lot of people. I mean, when I talk about that, there's a lot of people in the Midwest and in different cities, Flint, even Detroit, like where we were the center of different industries. And then that industry left, and then it left in its wake a lot of alcoholism and mental health problems that became generational trauma. And that is definitely the case in my family on both sides. Both of my great-grandfathers, actually no, my great-grandfather on my mom's side and my grandfather on my dad's side both died young due to alcoholism-related causes.
Oh, wow.
And the women were, I would say, is a pretty consistent story that there was a lot of domestic violence and abuse in the families. And just going through the cycles with that in Toledo, when I go back, I still see the remnants of that everywhere. It's very pervasive. It's in the air. Even when my dad visited a couple years ago after being in Miami for decades, he was like, this city makes me want to drink. It feels terrible here.
Oh, wow.
And he's like, yeah, I just feel like going to the liquor store. And the good thing is I don't know where it is anymore because everything keeps getting shut down and reestablished.
That's heavy. That's a heavy commentary.
So that's where I was born. I come from people who suffered tremendously. But my parents both, they were high school sweethearts, and they left when I was, I guess, like 1 or 2. My dad joined the military. And then that started a whole new set of traumas, being the child of an army man.
I can imagine.
But we traveled quite a bit. So we spent some time in Germany. I spent part of my childhood in North Carolina and in Georgia, where my sister was born. And those are all of the kind of formative places for where I think about my identity.
Does that movement around being I guess, military brat, not the best terminology.
Yeah,
but,
that's what people say, right?
But being a child of a person in the military, and that moving around, does that have any effect, or is that the reason for your nomadic kind of life? The fact that you are like, I'll see you today.
Yeah.
We just having this conversation about Eric Williams. I'll see you today.
I know. He called me this morning. He was like, I'm in Santa Fe. I'm like, really, dude?
It's like, I'll see you now. And then in like 2 weeks, you're like, yeah, I'm in Hurtengarten, Switzerland.
Okay, stop. I'm going to Geneva.
Yeah, look at you.
Yes.
But is that where that came from? You wanting to see things and just move around?
I would say yes and no, because my sisters also grew up with that childhood, and they've been in Atlanta and very stable for a very long time at this point.
Yeah.
So I'm the only child in my immediate family who continues to travel that way. So I would say it's also just being an artist and having the personality I do, having a kind of freedom-seeking spirit has always been part of my like way that I see the world. So even when I was a child, I used to read books about different cultures and countries and languages that I didn't directly experience, and I was fascinated with that. And so I always kind of vowed that when I grew up and I had control over my own life, that I would live in different places where I could meet different types of people. And one of the things that happened a lot moving around was that I actually experienced how closed-minded and destructive people can be to each other when you're an outsider. So I was bullied pretty viciously from the age of like 7 or 8 up until the age of maybe like 15. And this was all in different schools and different districts, different states. And so having that kind of abuse follow you around, it made me start to become very sensitive to some of the things we were talking about in the beginning, you know, about me being very attached to people who don't have access, who are treated like outsiders, who are the misfits, who are abused or mistreated. And I think that experience gave me a kind of empathy for that experience. And so that is what drives me to travel. I want to connect with people. I want to talk to them about their lives. I'm always so amazed at the resilience of the human spirit and the ways that somebody can build trust and do that fairly quickly, and also ways that people can, you know, not be trustworthy, and you'd be very surprised by the ways that they do that. So I don't know. I'm curious about humanity, and so that's the reason why I travel now.
In our conversation with Rashayla, we talk about how her work is so powerful and how having the kind of work and doing the kind of work that she does, how does she feel about being compared to others? That comparative balance, you know, such and such is great, but such and such is great too. That kind of thing. We also talk about the inspiration from those comparisons and how the art world tends to group black women together. No matter what they do, they try to group my sisters together. We talk about all those things here on Randomly Selected.
Well, what comparisons? I don't know what people compare me to. I be on my own lane so much. I don't really.
Well, I mean, I think people. Well, first of all, you have your own lane. It's very distinct. But when I think about you, I think about other folks who do what you do, and maybe in a different kind of way. Like an Eve Ewing is somebody that comes to mind a lot.
Oh, Eve Ewing, yes.
She's an amazing.
That's a wonderful person to be compared to. Thank you. Okay, all right.
She's an amazing writer.
Yes,
and she has a lot of depth. And she is very much able to,
and she's a G.
And that, yeah, and she's able to put her finger on things that are absolutely
words,
happening.
Right,
right, exactly.
Yeah,
and I see that in your work.
Oh yeah.
And then to balance it out, I think about the Astor and that nomadic thing with him as well.
Yes,
how he makes like the Astor be walking down 53rd Street,
I know.
And then like 12 hours later, he's on the other side of the world. It's like, how did he do that? I always wonder when you're making your work, when you're creating, what are you thinking? Are you even entertaining the thought of what anyone else is doing, or are you just 100% about let me do this? Not thinking about influences, but I mean just like the competitive nature of the world you're in.
Right. Let me be honest. I have had to work very hard not to compare myself to other people. It's a daily practice. I think everybody has proclivities and personality traits and whatnot that they don't like about themselves or things they think are kind of holding them back. Honestly, I think my comparison to others has held me back. It's made me a little bit of a, strangely, I would even say an underachiever. Like the level that I'm at, I don't think is actually at the level that I can attain.
You mean that you, wait a minute, hold on. So you're saying that you believe that there is.
So I'm happy you're bringing these names up because in my mind and my fantasy, I'm in that category.
I would say so.
I don't think of myself as like just a Chicago-based artist. I think of myself as a global artist. And
the funny thing, not to cut you off, the funny thing is I've never thought of you as a Chicago artist.
Oh.
I was surprised by the fact that I think saying being based in Chicago was your thing.
Yes.
Because I've never really been like, Rashayla's doing something in New York. Rashayla's doing something down
I've been here
south.
for 10 years. I own a house here.
Yeah. Well, see now, first of all, hold on. You own a piece of property in Chicago,
I
Illinois?
own a 3-flat. I'm a landlord.
Look at you.
And actually, to the Astor's credit, so I would say he and I have had a lot of very tense discussions about the meaning of like different representations in the art world. Yeah, he knows. But I would say that watching him do what he does at that scale actually did let me think, you know what? Seeing him do that and also knowing him as a person, I was like, I actually do know that I can do this property management thing.
Yeah.
And that has been the part of comparison that I think has worked well for me. If I see a person who I can talk to and I feel like their intellect is not higher than mine, that we're maybe at the same level, doing something greater than, and like kind of inspiring me, I'm like, okay, I can do that. And so being able to see people do these types of things, even before I came here to Chicago, there was a few artists in Atlanta and at Yale who I felt like we were on the same level intellectually, creatively, and they were living and thriving as artists. And I was like, if, William Cordova can do this, I certainly can do this. Right. If, I don't know, I'm trying to think of some other names of different people. Actually, there was an artist who's from Chicago, Kevin Williams, Wack. He does those very like romantic black paintings.
Went to high school with Kevin.
Hello.
Chicago
yes,
vocational,
Kevin
baby.
is cool dude, good people.
Always shout out CVS every chance I get.
Yes.
The Mighty Cavaliers, 2100 East 87th Street. Kevin, I remember watching Kevin. He had to have been a junior in high school, and he was unveiling these grand ass paintings in high school, and we were like, oh. And now his work is just unbelievable. That's my brother. Now, thank you for saying
Seeing
his
him
name.
be
That's my
successful
man.
was a very instructive moment for me because he's a good friend of a person I was dating at the time who's also, you know, pretty good graphic design artist and organizer in his own right, W. And so these people, they were very instructive in showing me, like, if you want to do this on your own and you want to be an entrepreneur, you can make it happen. You know, W's been organizing, you know, the art beats and lyrics things for years.
Absolutely.
Kevin, you know, he started, you know, selling these paintings at, like, you know, beauty expos and things like that and in beauty salons.
Yep.
And just seeing these like successful Black people. William, he was homeless at one point, you know? So just seeing all these people who I was like, you know, I love these people. I believe in what they do. They're very successful. They've created their own lane. I can do this. Yeah. What they do is not going to be what I do because my own lane is separate. But it was very inspirational for me. So I would say that I have taken a lot of inspiration from other artists and from these comparisons. Sometimes it hasn't been in my own best interest because I do feel like with the Black art world, they tend to like group all the Black women who do certain types of work together.
Yes, they do.
And I think I'm on another planet when it comes to that sometimes.
So why do they do that? Why is that?
It's racism and sexism. That's it. It's just when people, and even our own community does this. I remember another Black woman came to my studio once and confused me for another Black woman artist in Chicago that she was interviewing. And I was like, wow, this is weird that a Black woman curator is doing this. And I had to recognize that the way that racism and sexism functions is to deny people their humanity. It is to make you chase and try to prove yourself. And so it doesn't just work at the level of the like the white male cis professor, you know, kind of person or, you know, it works at the level of the mind and the psyche of even the people from your own community. So I was, being lumped together in categories with folks that now you see our trajectory has diverged quite dramatically and you can see like, no, my work is not like that. They are in their own kind of space as well. And to acknowledge that we are individuals. So that I've gotten to the place where I don't try to prove my humanity to people anymore. There was actually a really wonderful, I can't remember the actress's name, but she's a trans actress who was on Pose and she's very tall. I think her name is Dominique. I can't remember her last name, but she's the one who is like the house mother who's very like dominant. And she did this speech at like an event where she was getting an award and kind of like talking about trans rights. And she was like, you know, you don't have the right to tell me, you know, to give me my humanity. I'm demanding respect from you. And that kind of attitude, I was like, that's right, sis. Mm-hmm. Like, I'm not going to try to convince people that I am one of the like premier great like artists in this city. I'm not going to try to show that the work that I do is at that level. It will speak for itself and time will tell. And it always has. Anyone who has ever underestimated me always found themselves having to check it later.
I wonder how speaking with such strong convictions has informed Rashayla on how to maneuver through certain situations. We ask her about that. We also ask her about Black artists and the translation of Black culture to others and how that translation affects not just the people who receive it that aren't Black, but Black folks as well, people of color, whatever wording you like. It's Rashayla Marie Brown on Randomly Selected.
And so it is, right? No, I've been actually stepping more into that recently, kind of talking about that, not comparing myself to other people.
Yeah.
Because I've been such a very strong communicator, and sometimes it, you know, I mean, I would say a lot of times it's gotten me into trouble. Even I was having a phone call yesterday with a good friend of mine, the artist Clifford Owens, and he was like,
"Look at you."
He was like, "I think you're this piece," because he's going to show a piece of mine. He was like, "This is going to get us in trouble. What you doing here?" And I was like, "The people who've been addressed in that film have seen it."
Which film?
It's a new project that I'm working on as a part of my dissertation at Northwestern.
Okay.
In performance studies. And the film is basically like critiquing this set of, so there's a woman who's suing Harvard for reparations right now.
Right.
Her name is Tamara Lanier. She's a community activist. She also has worked with the NAACP, and she used to work in the criminal justice system as well as a probation officer. Mm. And so she has a very intimate connection to this idea of like Black Lives Matter. And she's suing Harvard for reparations with the same lawyer who represents George Floyd's family and Breonna Taylor's family, Benjamin Crump.
Right.
And she's suing them for reparations because she's a descendant of one of these folks who's in a set of photographs that were commissioned by Harvard to prove scientific racism in the late 1800s.
Ooh.
And she has a very compelling story. She has really good genealogical research. She has a real case. And if she won, it would change the landscape of higher education forever. Harvard is the richest university in the world, and most of their wealth is amassed through cultural theft and appropriation. So her suing for the rights and ownership of these daguerreotypes, these photographs that are very demeaning, they're incredibly demeaning images. I'm thinking a lot about the ways that these images have been used throughout the history of art. So there's a lot of artists who use these images, and a lot of artists who are also affiliated with Harvard who speak a lot about what it means to be an image maker as a Black person. And they don't actually have direct connection to Tamara. She's reached out to these people. She's tried to get their assistance. And I think part of it is because how Harvard is so powerful, and they've threatened a lot of people with lawsuits. Right. So I'm not even going to name names at this point. You can do research and find out who those artists are. But me naming these works for some people is perceived as a critique of the artwork of these other Black artists. To me, it's not that. It's to say that as much as you want to claim that you're liberating yourself, if you are working in this system which is designed to destroy your humanity, there's actually a ceiling and a limitation on what arguments you can make from within that space. Right. So you can be affiliated. You can do all of the work with the university. I mean, I'm in a university right now that doesn't have a clean history. None of them do. Right. But my point isn't that there's a perfect university where they're clean. It's to say there's a limitation on what you can say from that space. And so if you actually are about it and you want to do like the e-viewing work or whatever, I mean, even the artists we've been talking about, they may have an institutional center for what they do, but they also have things that they do externally, because there's going to be a limit at some point for how much work you can do from within a white supremacist, patriarchal institution. So that's the work that I'm doing that I think some folks are scared of, that has gotten some doors slammed in my face, even by friends and people that I've trusted in the art world. But I don't care, because I know that the truth always comes out. And I think ultimately this story needs to be told, and I think it needs to be told by someone like me, who actually another artist friend of mine. I feel like I'm just putting all these names out there because I want people to know these people. So my friend Lamont Hamilton, he also was based in Chicago for a while, and now he's living in Alaska. Wow. He's like wild man out there. But he's right. So he's out in the woods, doing his music and experimental, sound and stuff. Yeah. And we had this thing where we would call each other, we were like the insider outsiders. So every time that we would go to an art event, we would look at each other and be like, they don't want us here. We're the insider outsiders, because we're allowed to be in the space because of our prowess and our intellectual abilities as artists. It can't be denied. But at the same time, because we call people to task, and we are also very savvy about navigating spaces, people feel threatened by us.
Scared even.
Very scared. I've had someone, some very powerful, I had a powerful person one time actually come and whisper to me in my ear, like, oh, I have to watch out for you. And I was like, I hadn't at that point even had a solo exhibition. I was like, this is interesting that this person feels threatened by me when I haven't even done anything real yet.
We misidentify that too when people say shit like that.
Yeah.
It's like, what? Because you're not hearing I'm scared of you. You're hearing, what the fuck are you talking about? Why would you even say something like that to me?
It was a weird moment. It was a really weird moment.
I can only imagine, especially knowing you a little bit that I do.
Yeah.
I know you probably gave him the look too. Like, what the fuck are you
I said you probably do.
Oh, well, of course you said that.
You should.
Of course you said.
Don't sleep.
I want to ask you, I want to go back to Black image makers. And talk about Virgil a little bit and your critique of his MCA show. And the only reason why I'm bringing it up is because I want to frame it in the context of how other people see what we do.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Not so much your critique of his show, because that was an honest, very well thought out.
I critique because I love.
That's what I'm saying.
I want my people to be great.
And it didn't sound, didn't have hate in it. And it didn't sound like you were hating on him or what he was doing, but it was questioning why he was doing this this way with that institution.
Right, absolutely.
And shout out to the MCA. My man Peter Taub doesn't work there anymore, but Peter Taub, if you're listening, which I think you might be, shout out to you, brother. Thank you. Places like the Museum of Contemporary Art in Chicago, places like, name a museum, name a place that art is held in high standard anywhere on earth.
Yeah.
Black artists, in my estimation, have an extra weight on them when they show their work. It seems like you have to do either the super fucking natural or the minimal. There is no like in between when you're showing your stuff, or at least the perception of what your stuff should be in these museums that are owned by white folks. Virgil worked with Kanye forever. A lot of the imaging of Kanye is directly attributed to Virgil. Not all of it, but a lot of it.
Yeah.
And a lot of it has influenced the culture in an amazing way. I don't think anybody has ever seen anything like that, and you may not ever see anything like whatever Kanye is doing again. When you look at his work in relation to how black people are perceived, what is it that he may be missing? And why do people who are looking at this from the outside? Well, let me get you the first one first. What is it that he's missing? Because there is a part two to this. Not just Virgil either, because I'm not trying to dunk on him.
Yeah, no, I think
he's dope.
that.
But I mean, him and other artists of color. What is it that they're missing when it comes to interpreting what people of color, black folks, are going through?
Self-validation and reparations. I think those are the two keys that they miss, because when you are looking for acceptance from a predominantly white audience, and that's ultimately what a lot of that is about, you can't self-validate. So to see your value in the context of your own community and to see that as enough, and that's why I even was bringing up someone like Kevin Williams, whose entire career has been about self-validation, validation within the black community.
I can attest to that. No joke, absolutely.
And thinking about what it means for someone to think that's not enough. That success means that you have to get the award from this group of people. That is the first problem. If you can't see yourself as valid within your own context, where you grow up, where you come from, then the moves you make to twist and contort yourself around the standards of a system that hates you will look false to your people. And that's the part that I think it's more important to me to talk about that than it is about like someone being a sellout or someone doing something in this particular institution and they're not doing it right and black people just can't never do anything because there's always going to be somebody to criticize them. Let's be clear. I speak from a position of you can only really critique if you are doing the work. And since I know that I'm doing the work, I am the person who should be saying this critique. Yeah. If it was someone else and they hadn't actually put some skin in the game, then yeah, we might need to be quiet. But I think that that's important that you have skin in the game in that situation when you do critique each other. But also, yeah, self-validation. So that is important. And then the second part I bring up about reparations, it seems like it's on the... It seems like it's like the opposite in a way, because it's like, well, then you're looking for validation from the oppressor. To me, it's not about validation. It's about equity. It's about knowing that when you walk into a space that you don't have to ask and beg for anything. They owe you already. And so if you have that mentality that you are owed, it's different than when you think someone needs to treat you with a certain kind of humanity or dignity or respect. When I walk into a space, I'm like, you owe me. You owe me, you owe my ancestors, you owe all the black women who raised your children, you owe all the people who did blood, sweat, and tears to build these buildings that are hundreds of years old in this city. You know what I mean? Or 100-something years old. I can't remember when the fire was.
It was a long time ago.
Yeah. But to acknowledge that there are things in the city, and I'm not just saying for me specifically, you know, Rashayla Marie Brown and the descendants, the ancestry I have, but I do think that the cultural ownership, knowing that you and your people are the ones who built something, that they are the ones who own the land, who they were the ones who are the stewards of this landscape, whatever that is, that's the part that I think also is missing. It's like when you're looking for institutional acceptance and you can't let your community be enough, you're also looking for a certain type of, you know, cash flow that's coming from a poverty mindset. It's not coming from the fact that you know that these are your riches and they owe you. Yeah. And so when I, you know, sign contracts for exhibitions, when I talk to people about my work, contracts are a huge part of what I do, because I know that they're not typically evaluating my work from the kind of ethical and moralistic standpoint, that the only language that really speaks in this country is like a certain kind of like legal, financial, and I need to make sure that I remind them that I didn't forget.
Yeah.
That y'all owe me.
The perception that people take of the community that aren't in the art world, what is that like for an artist? That thing that makes an artist tick when someone else says something that's not totally accurate. Also, what is Rashayla, the woman, not the artist? What's her initial take on the current climate in the United States? Side note, at the time that we taped this episode, the conflict on the U.S.-Mexico border, on the U.S. side of the border between the United States and citizens of Haiti, was in full steam. So we asked her about that as well. Little context, y'all. I got you. Here's the last part of Randomly Selected with Rashayla.
I think when we're talking about young people or youth and their experience of art, I always try to validate. It's about going back to that validation. I think that a person's critique at that level is just as valid as anyone else's. So I wouldn't go in there being like, oh, there's something he's missing. I would say maybe once he's had a certain number of experiences, or he's in those environments where there's like, you know, a bunch of institutional gatekeepers wanting something from him and he has to negotiate all these competing priorities, maybe he'll have a little bit more empathy for how that came to be. And at the same time, I'm a person who is also, I'm older and I've navigated those things, and I recognize that yes, it's harder. Yes, it's not the easy road, but I don't take the easy road. I stay on what my mother says, the right side of right. Yeah. So even if I have to go back and apologize, I screw up, you know, I'm sorry, I really didn't treat you well. I do it. I do the hard thing. And I try to consistently show up for that work. And I think that may be what I'm trying to get to when I talk to like younger people about these spaces. It's not about like us versus them, or you're the outsider, this is the insider. It's about the fact that there's competing priorities in every single space, and you need to have your values straight. And you need to know who you are. And when you know your values and when you know who you are, no institutional priority is going to change that. No amount of money is going to change that. That's why you see people fail up. Exactly. That's why we see, even speaking about Kanye, he's been experiencing a lot of distress and trauma and situations in his life based off of not facing certain demons in his past, and he's failing up. So the failures get more spectacular. They get more distressful when you avoid your work. And I see this from a lot of people, and I don't wish this on anyone. It's painful to fail publicly. It's painful to go from being the loved star child or whatever, wonderkind, and then everybody saying how much you were this, that, and the other, you know, and putting you down. I have great empathy for that. And I also recognize that one thing that makes life fair is that everybody has a decisive moment, and they usually have several decisive moments where they can say, you know what, the pain is too great. I'm going to change. I'm not going to keep doing this. I'm not going to keep self-sabotaging. I'm not going to keep undermining myself. I'm not going to keep hating myself. I'm not going to keep bending over backwards for crumbs. And it saddens me deeply when a person doesn't make that choice. I don't feel good seeing someone fail, even if they're an enemy of mine or someone who did me wrong. I was having a moment with God this morning about that. I was like, God, why is it hurting me so much to watch other people fail? And I'm like, you know what? I have to accept that there is at least that fairness, that they do have that decisive choice at some point. Maybe their choices are limited compared to mine. Maybe they're experiencing war, extreme poverty, health issues, but there's always somewhere a choice for something.
Is that within the realm of you being an empath?
Yes, I would definitely call myself an empath.
I would say so.
Maybe an empathic leader, empathic intuit, because there's like different elements of like empathy. And because I'm not a caretaker, I don't do that. But because I know there's empaths who do that, who are really about taking care of other people. Mine is more about being the kind of leader that really connects to people through their heart and gets them to be true to themselves. Even when someone's on my bad side, I know how to get into their heart. And then usually they always come back years later and they're like, you know what, I'm sorry. Or, you know what, I was really jacked up when I was in that space and now I'm different. I want to show you how. So that's the beauty of empathy, is that at some point you can always win everybody over to your side, because it's all about humanity. It's all about everybody being equal to me.
I would be remiss if I did not mention at the time that we're taping this, there is a situation on the U.S. side of the U.S.-Mexico border involving citizens from Haiti.
Yes.
And the treatment that they are receiving from a nation that is alleged to have 1,000% legality when it comes to granting political asylum to people. Haiti suffered a 7.0 earthquake, and I think like 3 days ago a 4.9 earthquake. Subsequently, there's no land for them to sit on. The president of Haiti was assassinated a few weeks ago. They have no leadership, no real leadership in Haiti. They come to America, their closest neighbor, aside from Cuba, where they can have a chance.
Yeah.
The country puts cowboys on horseback with whips and sticks and shit, and beating the hell out of people, trying to force them to get back on a plane to go back to somewhere where they don't want to be. The United States just ended a 20-year war with Afghanistan, and by no means am I going to, when you hear this, I'm just saying it because I'm saying it. I think everybody should have a chance to be able to move around this world. And I understand why Afghanis want to get the hell out of Afghanistan, because it's a mess too. All the 860 Afghanis are coming to Illinois. Don't know how many Haitians are going to come, because there are hundreds of thousands of Haitians at the U.S.-Mexico border. Not Rashayla the artist. Rashayla the black woman, the woman from Toledo, Ohio. When you see this, what is your initial take? I'm trying real hard because it is fucking me up.
Yeah, Rashayla, the human being. I mean, the first thing I think about is children.
Yeah, exactly.
And I think about myself as a child, and I was not in a war, but my father was in a war. He was stationed many times in different wars, and he was a combat soldier, so I can only imagine what he saw, what he did. And my father, you know, thinking about him dying every day, it really shaped me. It really.
Which war was he in, by the way?
He was in the Desert Storm, the Gulf War.
Gulf War.
And you know, he survived. He made it out. He's, you know, mentally stable, which is really remarkable considering all he's been through. So I think about the children. I think about the impact that this has for generations after the moment when we think about it. And I think about how this shapes someone from a child. I think about a 4-year-old, a 5-year-old, a 6-year-old. Of course, I think about their parents as well and how that is like a generational thing. But I really just think about how this is going to come back. Because everything comes back.
It always comes
And so that's why I'm thinking about the children, because it's like when you traumatize a generation, when you hurt people at a very young age, it produces things that you can't even, like, we don't even know the impact that this is going to have on us as a nation, as a world, until those people are adults. And I think a lot about that, the cycles of generational trauma. And I talk a lot to my ancestors in regarding that situation, because I try to remember that they've been through wars, they've been through slavery, they've been through immigration, they've been through getting their land stolen. Like my ancestors, like they're all mixed in these different cultures, and so I just try to remember, you know, the impact of that will continue to be felt, and I hope and pray that maybe just like how I'm, you know, standing on the shoulders of my ancestors, and I don't even think they'd be able to imagine the person that I am, that hopefully that this will also produce people who will change the world. I think in great hardship, I mean, we see this, great leaders come out of great hardship. You know, Maya Angelou, just thinking about all the people who I admire, it's like they went through hell. And right, you have that decisive moment and you get to choose, am I going to be like them, the people who did this to me, or am I going to change the world? And so it's the same energy. I think a lot about Hitler and the fact that he was an artist and how he used his talent as an artist and as a public speaker to destroy and to create one of the most violent symbols that we all see as swastika. Now we think of hatred and death. We don't think of the original Hindu meaning of that. And so he had that capacity. He could have healed and changed the world with that same energy. Who knows what he would have been capable of? I even think about this with a lot of our political leaders now. it's like you have a moment. You have the moment to choose where you want to be. If you want to heal this generation, or if you want to be the decisive factor that we look back and say we're ashamed of.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I want to be on the right side of history, so I'm trying to do my best. But it's a daily battle too.
Nah, you dope, man. You all right. You doing all right. I appreciate.
I'm a human. I have flaws just like everybody else.
Yeah, of course. Yeah. But you're dope.
Thank you.
Silly.
I accept.
I appreciate you. I'm glad that you made the trek. I'm glad that you're in Chicago. I'm so glad that you're around. I hate not seeing you as much as I used
know.
to.
It's a good city to root myself. I mean, I've been here all summer, having a great time with my friends, my homies. Shout out to Stephen Flemister. It was his birthday yesterday.
That's right, Steve. Happy birthday,
my
brother.
friend Tavia, Regina, Leah. I mean, these are my family here. So just people who've been holding me all pandemic and keeping me as my surrogate family here in Chicago. I love y'all.
You ever need me for anything.
Fabi. Can't forget Fabi.
Oh, that's right. The great. The great Fabi.
Yes.
You need anything from me, all you got to do is ask.
Yes.
I got you. Thanks for being on Randomly Selected.
Thank you for having me.
On behalf of the other nomad that we know, he's very appreciative.
My brother.
I'll see you soon.
All right.
Thank you. Thanks so much for listening to Randomly Selected. It is appreciated. Please subscribe. Please tell your people. We really appreciate that too. The next episode of Randomly Selected, you think I love Chicago? Watch out. Sherman Dilla Thomas is coming. What? That's right. The Chicago historian is going to be with us to really talk about Chicago. And we get to learn about him too. It's not all TikTok with that brother. He's a good dude. I'm really, really glad that he agreed to do it. You're going to enjoy it. You know why? Because I said so. Have a great day, night, weekend, wherever you are, whatever you're doing. On behalf of the men and women at the Silver Room, peace. See you soon.